Hello, everyone. Welcome back to E20 Zone TV. I hope you're having a very, very good Tuesday wherever you are. To my right is Brian, West Ham Fan TV's very own Brian. And we're here to talk about the past, the present, the future, and more. Brian, first off, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, mate. Good to see you again, James. Good to be on the platform again. Yeah, as I was saying before, it's just I'm kind of glad the season's come to an end.
No worries at all, mate. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Let's get into it. What have you made of the past year? Because it's
Oh,
been up and down like a good one.
up and down is the best way to describe it, mate. And I kind of think it's been a season of two halves. If you take the
Mm,
first half of the season leading up to Christmas, it was really good. It was bizarrely good in terms of, we started off well, first four games, getting the results against Chelsea, Brighton,
yeah,
etc., etc. Kind of pulling off wins where in hindsight and even in real time, some of them were a bit fluky. We had
yeah.
Areola keeping us in the game, the low block working overtime, and then just counter attacking and picking off goals and stuff like that. We saw something a little bit different at first with like the 4-1-4-1 system that he played at the very beginning, and it seemed to work all right because it was a way of accommodating all of those new players. But yeah, so the first half of the season I think was good, even though there was a few dodgy results that came in there. More the Fulham one comes to mind because that was sort of right at
Yeah.
the end of the year, that one. And then we then go and follow that up with the Arsenal win 2-0. So if you look at it up until December, close of the year, sitting in sixth place, looking decent, a little bit of a gap as well between us and anything from eighth down. I thought, you know what? It's looking all right. It's looking hopeful because we had a
Yeah.
lot of people that were still on the fence around Moyes, and there were people that were holding their reservation. They wanted to see how the first part of the season played out, or at least the first 10 games anyway. So I think everyone was happy from that point of view. Then comes the turn of the year, and then we have the January transfer window. And for me, I think this is where everything kind of went wrong. We had players inside the team that were vocal about wanting to leave, and rightly so. They won't get in a fair crack of the whip. Players like Ben Rama, Fornells,
Mm,
etc., and Kira. So it meant that those guys had to come off the books. And there's an argument to be said that should we have kept them? But I'm always of the view of if someone wants to go, you got to leave them because it just we saw how Fornells became the
yeah.
person he became once he won't get in a look in. He looked upset, he looked miserable, etc. So I think we needed to do right by them to kind of let them go. Then then there was the Phillips gamble, and it was one that even on reflection, I remember I was for it. I was one of those ones that thought, you know what, there are people that don't want him in because they don't see him as a priority, which I definitely agreed with that. He wasn't priority. But what I thought he would do, I thought by giving him a run of games, I actually thought he would come in the side and make us a little bit more possession based, better on the ball. And I thought in time he would be the co-anchor with Alvarez in place of Suchek. And that's what
Mm,
I thought. I thought bringing him in would make us be a bit more better on the ball. But it came at a period as well where Suchek arguably was in his best form. So he became someone that was indroppable at that period of time. And then it just didn't work out for Phillips. Window closed. We didn't get anyone else in. We badly needed someone on the left, needed a striker, etc. And then slowly but surely, the wheels started to fall off. And then it came into a space where us as West Ham fans, we've seen the signs for a long time. So there's certain things that were happening. We've seen the signs. So a lot of
yeah.
fans became vocal in terms of summarizing why it was time for a change. And the media got involved and basically gave their view, which we all know. But I think it just goes to show how poor the league has been in a sense of anyone outside of the top four, because even though we've only won 4 or 5 league games this calendar year, we're not far off. If you look, if we won 1 or 2 games, do you know what I mean? Or some of
Yeah.
those head games against United, Chelsea, or games where we should have won, Newcastle, etc.
Sheffield United,
Sheffield
Burnley, teams like
United,
that.
right? If we'd won 2 of those games,
Yeah.
look where we would be. So it just goes to show that the fact that from December we were playing so poor, we were still in the mix up until March. Do you know? Well, April, pretty much
Yeah.
in terms of we didn't drop that far from 6th place. So it's but it's one of those ones. As soon as we lost to Leverkusen, um, I felt the campaign was over from a both league and cup perspective. Do you know what I mean? We were kind of hoping for something, for a miracle, really, and we almost got it. But once we lost that game, for me, I kind of resigned to the fact that we're not going to be in Europe next season, and we just need a change.
Is it a bad thing that we're not in Europe though, Brian? Because we've had a good run. Like when you look at the last 3 years of West Ham's journey, yeah, we've had some good moments. Like obviously, I'm going to talk to you about David Moyes in a little while, but like over the last year, I agree with you. Some of the defeats have been heavy. Like the Arsenal one, the Villa away, Fulham away. Liverpool away in the cup. That was another one that was just dented the confidence. Chelsea, we've been absolutely obliterated this year by teams. And do you know what? Even when West Ham have been at their sort of worst, I can't remember a time where in the past we've been absolutely hammered like that consistently over a season, one or two maybe, but not against lower ranked sides. Even Palace, as someone just mentioned there, like got obliterated there and all. So
Mm.
why is it that it's why are we getting done every time this year for some reason?
I think there's a couple of reasons for it, in my opinion. I think the main reason has been the defense. We
Yeah,
haven't been in a position to have um, a consistent and settled partnership that works. Zuma was a very good defender, and based on his knees that are basically shot, he is someone, unfortunately, that he's always laboured in every game, and it's not someone we can depend on. I think on paper, the Zuma Aguerd partnership is arguably the one that was meant to work and should have worked, but Aguerd is also someone who didn't have the best of season, and he's also proven to be injury prone.
yeah,
If you then look at the understudies, Mavropanos came in and he's played quite a lot this season throughout in terms of league and in the Europe and stuff. And he's had some good games. I think he progressively got better. But the thing with him is he's liable to make a mistake. And I
yeah.
just think, a bit like Diop, when someone's got the ability, but they're going to make a mistake, they become a liability. And then Obona, who effectively is the fourth man, the fourth choice centre back. We all love. Everyone's got time for Obona, but he's 35, and we know that he's someone that you know we can't. He couldn't be a starter as far as I'm concerned. Then if you look at the fullback situation, it's one of those ones where we finally kind of sorted out the left hand side in Emerson, who started again. He's someone as well that I think 3/4 of the season was very good. But then on the right hand side,
It seemed
um,
like with him though, Brian, that when Paqueta don't play well, Emerson
yes,
don't play well, and when Emerson
agreed,
plays great, Paqueta plays great. It's just like
100%.
not this season, especially in 2024. I can't really remember a time where the pair of them have been together brilliant as a collective.
Yeah, that's a good point, to be honest with you. And that continuity, I know what you mean. Whenever Paqueta's been on the left,
Mm.
they do have that link up, which is almost deliberate and purposeful, isn't it? And if someone else is playing there, you don't get that same synergy. Um, so no, I agree with that. But then with the defense, it's been terrible. It's been our weakest area of the
Yeah,
whole team. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think the style Moyes has maintained to try and play, his way, which effectively is a low block, but then the midfield setup hasn't been really quite right. So the back
mm.
line are not getting the protection that's needed. But even so, the back line don't have legs. And this season we've conceded the most that we've ever conceded. Do you know what I mean? In like the top flight, basically, it's beating the Avram Grant error as well. By what, three or five goals. That's what I
and,
mean.
and that was bad. That
Yeah,
was
that,
really
that
bad back in the day.
that's what I mean. You have to go back to like the 60s or something like that to kind
Yeah,
of like, so you know, it's really bad. And I think as bad as the defense has been, it's been how we've also defended as a team. So it's kind of like the setup
yeah.
that has contributed to it. But the defense has been shocking, and it needs to be overhauled, I think.
I agree with you 100%, mate. I think defence, I think they all need to sort of be reshaped. I think there's a bit of an issue in midfield. I think we've got too many people who are just sort of doing the basics, but we need a bit more than just basic midfielders. Do you know what I'm saying? And obviously up front, Antonio can't do it all the time. Do you know what I mean? He's 34. Like, we're going to keep him here for another 2 years. Like, he's like wheelchair going around the place. But I agree. I agree that the defense has been a bit mad. Obviously, now I'm going to speak to you about sort of the present, and the present is that David Moyes is going to be leaving West Ham. Are you surprised how it's gone with him in regards of him leaving, or are you sort of not?
Um, it's hard. I think the longer the season's gone on, I'm not surprised. I'm
Mm.
There's a side to me that's happy the way it's happened. I think the last time I was on here, James, we was looking at, you know, what would the ideal situation be, and I remember saying like, I would actually want David Moyes to just sort of like, he leaves. You know what I mean? It's not a thing where
Yeah,
he's sacked. He leaves, club gets someone else in, and then we move on. We say thank you for the things that he's done, and then we just move on and done away with it. And in hindsight, it has kind of gone that way. It was a little bit embarrassing in the sense that stuff getting leaked to the media when the club were known to be actively looking for
yeah.
replacements. I think from a publicity point of view, that wasn't a good look. Do you know what I mean? In terms of sort of, you got
Should they have
someone.
come out though, Brian? Should they have come out and said, "Listen, like we're going to have to make a decision here. Like you, like if they're not prepared to back him, like look at Klopp for instance. I know it hasn't worked out with Klopp and Liverpool in regards of releasing it so early. Liverpool have collapsed towards the back end of this season, and that's why they're not going to win the league. Like,
Mm.
but do you think West Ham after Leverkusen was done? They should have come out and said that this will be Moyes' final sort of hurrah, and then all the fan base know where everyone stands and goes from there.
Yeah, I see that point. I kind of flip flop with this one, and I think
Mm,
like, other than the fans, who else is it benefiting really? Like,
yeah,
you know, we say that from a fan point of view, like just come out already and tell us he's going or whatever. But the practicalities of it does have a psychological impact on everything else. You know,
yeah,
the effort made, the training, the communication, everything sort of becomes laboured. And I feel we kind of saw that once things did started to leak out to
mm,
the press. If you evaluate some of those games like Crystal Palace, etc., where the players looked like they were just sleepwalking, it looked like they didn't give a toss. And then if you
yeah.
even look at the first half of the Luton game, it was just atrocious. Like, so I think, yeah, on one hand, I could say, yeah, I get that point of view, but I don't think that's benefiting anyone apart from the fans, really.
See, the only thing with that is that the fans need to know a bit sooner because it was starting to get toxic in the grounds. It wasn't so much at the LS from what I've been hearing. Like it hasn't really been getting sort of mayhem there, but away from home, people walking out, people round with each other, like fighting each other, banners and everything. Like I just think the way the ownership have carried themselves is just a lack of class and lack of respect to the manager. That's give us some really good times. Like this season hasn't been so good. And I understand it where people have been sort of wanting this man out. Like I can understand it to a point because everyone's got their own preference. But to go and get this man out and sort of embarrass the man by saying that you're going after other managers and not even tell the fan base that we don't even know whether he's staying or going, just shows a lack of class from anyone really. Do you know what I'm saying, Brian?
Yeah, completely. And that's the thing. I think that it fell down. I think if they went
Yeah,
about their business in a certain way with a little bit more integrity, um, and then like it just would have looked better. It would have looked cleaner. I also think Moyes as well had a part to play in it. There was probably a
Yeah,
side to him that was digging his heels in a little bit and thinking, you know what, I'll go when I'm ready to go, or whatever. But I do think after like listening to a few other podcasts and stuff and in the nose, like it was the club's decision in terms of the powers that be that decided that you know we're not going to basically, there's going to be no more Moyes. You know, he mentioned about having the contract on the table, etc., and we'll make a decision at the end of the season. But I think from what I've heard, I think that basically changed based on the performances and the results, etc. Funny enough, I listened. I don't know if you saw it, James, but I listened to a decent podcast about 6 days ago on the Athletic
yeah,
FC. So David Aldstein and what's his name, Tim Spears or something like that. Basically, journalists in the know, but they done like a really good half an hour segment around Locatelli, which we'll probably talk about. But
yeah.
in addition to that, it was kind of a balanced view, and it kind of took into consideration the fans' perspective and say like the media perspective, and they covered things like you know, the Conference League, how that win actually masked some of the decay that was happening, and the
Mm.
fact that potentially Moyes, the club could have got rid of him last season if it wasn't for that win. Um, and they just spoke about other things, which I think so it's worth checking it out.
But is it, because we will talk about Lopetegui in a minute, yeah? But is it a bad season finishing ninth? Like, can you see what I'm saying? Like when I hear people say obviously about West Ham and they look at it and they go like, "Oh, they want West Ham to be better. I want West Ham to be better like the next man." Like, do you know what I'm saying? I'm with them 100%. But with the amount of money that we've spent and the teams that are above us, like they're all big hitters. Like Aston Villa have spent a lot of money, got
Mm,
really ambitious owners. Newcastle the same, and then you've got the big six. Now, for us, if West Ham do finish ninth this season, that ain't a bad season. Like in regards of where we're trying to get to. Like because it ain't a bad season. I don't like. What would you say, Brian? Is it a good season? Is it a bad season? Has it been a season that's been masked over because of certain games? Like, what you
yeah.
saying on that?
Yeah, the latter. I think it's been masked over because of certain games. Me
Yeah,
personally, I think from the league campaign, I don't think it's been a good season, and it's based on the fact, like I said at the beginning, whereby if we had another 3 or 4 wins, we basically would be like, fourth, not fourth, sorry, fifth, sixth,
yeah.
basically. We'll be in that sort of that position where Newcastle are now, really. I think now just below Tottenham, so sixth place, quite easily. And I think the reason why I say it's a bad season is just because there were key moments where we had a chance to kick on and the opportunity wasn't taken just due to poor decision to making
Yeah.
um, by the manager, also by players as well. The players have got to take responsibility for that too. I also feel in order to match the ambition that the club is trying to portray, it's enabled us to get players like Kudus and Paquetá and those kind of guys. And I think what happens is if you don't match your ambition, it then means that those players are likely going to look to leave. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later. So the longer a situation like this season goes on, it actually puts us in a deficit. Do you know what I mean? And I think the other side of it as well is the reality of it in terms of what we are as a club potential wise is I don't think that we're aspiring for better in terms of league position. I think it's about we feel now that we are a top six side. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
That has the capabilities with a bit of luck as well to be in a position like Villa. If particularly if you're not in Europe, and this is why
Yeah.
not being in Europe could actually work in our favour for next season. But I think it just takes a few things that could have went the other way that could have actually made our season a lot more better.
But do you honestly believe, Brian, that we are a top six side? Because I look at West Ham. I'll tell you
Mm.
what I think, and I'll let you land on what you want to say. Yeah, when I look at us, I don't see a top six side there because I just don't see the ambition from the owners at the top to go on and kick on and be that top six side. And people use Aston Villa as a prime example. Look at Villa. Look at Villa. Look what they're doing. They've got an ambitious owner. They've got an ambitious manager, and they've got a team full of talented individuals who they're sort of paid a lot of money for. Like I look at their left back, Luca Dina. He played the other night. Yeah, they've got two really good left backs at the club. We haven't even got really one. You know what I mean? We've got Emerson, and then after that, we've got a 35 or 34-year-old Cresswell. So it's like I don't feel West Ham are at that standard yet. I think West Ham are a top 10 side though. I think all day long West Ham should be in the top half consistently, and then you make the step to try and go for the top six. But can we really get into the top six? Like we'd have to spend a lot of money and build a side like Villa have done, and also have the right manager, which obviously Lopetegui is going to be that man. So, what are you saying on that, Brian?
I think, yeah, I don't disagree too much. I think we're a top 8 side. When we play
Mm,
to our potential, I think we're like a top 8 side. I think there are other teams that have come into fortune or have had misfortune. So if you look in like the last couple of years, Brighton have had that purple patch, right, where they've sort of
yeah.
breaking into that mold of being sort of like that next come up team. And then Newcastle came into money. Not that they spent it, but then Eddie Howe has made them play a certain way. So that's kind of
Mm,
brought them back into the mix. But then you also had teams that have fallen off in the last couple of years. That be it, funny enough, the teams that are just above us in terms of Chelsea, Man United, and Tottenham. They've all sort of fallen off a little bit. Tottenham have, I guess they've had a decent season this year, considering their best players left,
yeah.
and they've still managed to challenge, and they've exceeded where they finished last season. And then Chelsea are sort of coming back, having that run. But I think they're a good example, Chelsea, where they've spent £1 billion, but still haven't got it right. And
Mm,
that's why I think it's not just the money you throw at it; it's how the strategic operation is run from top to bottom. And you've always said, James, that the problem has always lied above the manager, and it's come from the people at the top, and then that kind of festers down. And I think with the problems that we've experienced over the last 10, 15 years, they're always going to be, there's elements of that are going to be the same because of the
yeah.
people at the top.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you on that. Like now, I look at sort of the future now, and obviously Moyes is going to say goodbye. Julian Lopetegui is going to be the man to come in and take the place. First question is, Brian, are you happy with the appointment, or do you think West Ham should have went a bit more younger with a bit of a long-term project?
I think ideally we all run it down the run. Once it was leaked that we were in conversations with him, that would have been the preferred choice. I
Mm,
think, he's got age, ability, tactical nous, and I think like he would have been a good fit. But he's a manager, and I think he came in and he wanted complete control, which sort
yeah.
of probably went against the foresight of what the club is. With Locatelli, I think as time has gone on, I've warmed to the idea more. I like pretty much most people were a little bit reserved about it and thought it was like a sideways step. But on reflection and doing a little bit more research on him, I've, I I'm a bit more optimistic. And the
Mm,
fact of the matter is as well, we are going to see a change. We are going to see a change to what we've been experiencing for the last, three years. You know what I mean? At least, and that change is not just going to be personnel. It's also going to be a system change. He's a 4-3-3 manager. Um, the style he wants to play, which is possession based, which is going to be quite interesting for some of the players we've got.
mm,
Um, so, there are going to be significant changes, which I feel will be refreshing. So there will be a bit of reprieve. I think there'll be a period where the fans will almost give him a bit of time. I think, the optimism will change the nearer the next season comes. And I think a lot of people will get on board because all of the rumor mill will start running about potential players we're getting in, and
Yeah.
everyone will start getting excited, and it'll be after the Euros, you know, and everyone will be looking forward to it. So I think people's attitudes will change as the season gets nearer.
One thing I'm going to say to you, Brian, is what's your expectations for next season?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. My because it's the unknown effectively, right? But if you look at next season, what I'd be hoping for is a good cup run. I think it's
Right.
long overdue having a good cup run, and hopefully, you know, getting a bit of luck in that. In terms of the league, I would probably be looking for a first season of this manager to finish kind of where we are now, maybe top 8, and realistically. Um, but it all, to be honest with you, it kind of depends who we get in, because there's going to be a complete rebuild
I,
is almost needed.
I
Do you know
agree
what I
with you
mean?
on this. I do agree with you on this because there's two ways I look at this. It's either going to kick into gear and West Ham are going to be all right, yeah, and we're all going to be happy. Or if we sign these players and they don't kick into gear, we've got a lot of players there that we're relying on, and we want them all to gel at the same time. The issue is that this rebuild is probably the biggest rebuild in West Ham's Premier League history. Like, it's in the Premier League era, because the amount of players we're getting rid of, a lot of people who's been there for a long time, like your Abonners, your Cresswells, like the old guard, they're going to be going. Well, obviously Tim Styling gets mentioned all the time, like he's the Messiah, and like he's going to have to pull like some rabbits out of some hats, like to bring in players that are going to hit the ground instantly. Like, we can't wait for these players to bed these players in. These players are going to have to hit the ground running straight away, and that's the only fear I do have. Like, I think if West Ham can finish in the top 10 in the first season under Lopetegui, I'll be happy. I'll be really happy with that. I think, you know what, right, top 10 is where the standards should be now. Like, I don't think us finishing 12th or 13th is right, considering we're going to spend some money. Obviously, we could lose Paqueta, and like he could be out the door, and we've got a lot of other players who are going. So I'm a bit nervous about this rebuild. Like, it has to be spot on, this one, because we've seen it so many times. I remember when we left Upton Park to go to Stratford first season, signed loads of players. It was a bit of a nightmare, and we just about stayed in the league. Do you know what I'm saying? So, what do you make of that, Brian, in regards to the rebuild?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I say, he's going to be very busy, right? You know,
Yeah,
in terms of, there's a lot of conversations to be had. You got, like you said, the players that have been around a long time that I guess we're assuming are not going to be in the plans no more, but we don't actually know that. Then you got the fringe players, people like the Cornets and stuff. You also got the loan players that are coming back. So people forget about Kira and Ben Rama. There's a conversation to be had there about what their views are about rejoining the squad. So, and then obviously you've got the academy players potentially. He's going to want to have a look at everyone. He's going to want to feel everyone out to see what they want and what their expectations are. So for those that want to go, he can move them on
yeah,
and then sort of work. But he'll have his plan. And I think I'm with, say, like, if the situation with Paqueta is what a lot of us think it is, in terms of, you know, a potential suitor comes in, I think if the money's used well for him, because
mm,
it will be nothing less than 85 million, which is a nice chunk of money. So if it's used correctly, and you bring in a couple players with that of a certain standard, even if you look at the guys over at Crystal Palace, the Elises, the Essays,
yeah.
that, you know, that kind of talent, younger as well, then I would be optimistic. So it is about how the money would be used, and it's also about who wants to go, who wants to stay, because I think a lot of the players that, other than the old guard, the other ones who you know, were on the fringes of going, was due to the fact that they've been sort of isolated out of the team. So
Yeah.
and you know, so people like Ben Johnson not signing contracts again, Obama's, all those guys, are
Are you, surp-
conversations to be had.
are you surprised how bad it actually is, though, there, in regard to that sort of team? Like, how it's so disorganized it is, though, Brian. Like, with no, well, people going for frees. You got situations with Zuma where he's got a year left. You offer him a new deal to let that run down. It is quite a mess, especially in like the squad wise.
Yeah, it's a complete mess. And James, I tell you this, I'm not surprised because it's kind of been like this for a long time. There's two
Mm.
things like West Ham have not really done good in the last 5 years, right? And one is sort of like that strategic planning in terms of when you're buying and selling players and looking at the contracts and that. The other thing is like when we do get rid of players, we don't get nothing for them. So we end up
Yeah.
losing millions and millions of pounds for people that we've bought for so much money, and then we lose money on them. And I think from a business perspective, it's terrible. Look how many players we've lost money on. And it's just bad. It's kind of like, yeah, it's bad business management. Do you see what I mean? Um, and I just think, yeah, it's so I'm not surprised because it's kind of been like that for a long time.
Is that how it's going to be at West Ham for the future, Brian? For you, at West Ham are going to start signing these players like Mohamed Kudus, get them at the club, build them up, and then sell them for a lot of money in the future? Like, are we going to start seeing that every year West Ham are going to lose one of their best players each year, but bring another two in to sort of develop over the next 2 years? Because like obviously last year it was Deck, this year it's going to be Paqueta. Next year I think Mo will go. Is that what the future is with West Ham now?
Only if we don't live up to the desired ambition that we're trying to achieve, which
Yeah,
is European football. That's sort of the benchmark now, where we've had a taste of that from the club, the European nights, 3 years in a row, etc. That's almost the benchmark. I'm not surprised if when Lopetegui had his interview or any of the potential suitors had their interview, that was probably a question put to them. Do you think you could get us into the Europa League or the
yeah,
Conference League? You know, and a good thing with Lopetegui, look, he's got Premier League experience. He's obviously played against us numerous times um, for two teams, in fact, with Seville and Wolves, and like so, he knows the personnel. He knows what we got squad wise. So if he fancies it, it makes me. It does make me. That's what I'm saying. The more I kind of think about it, without sort of like being rational, I am. I'm a bit more hopeful. Put it, yeah, hopeful is probably the right word. I'm not like ecstatic, but I'm hopeful.
mm. Few questions for you, Brian, and then we're going to talk about obviously Mental Health Awareness Week. First question: who should West Ham's captain be next season?
Ooh,
There you go. I've dropped that one
well,
straight away.
well. Um, yeah. So if there's a change in the captaincy, me personally, I'd probably give it to Bowen. Um, I'm not really. I don't think Bowen's like leadership quality, but he kind of leads by example with his tenacity
Agree.
on the pitch, and I
Yeah,
think giving him that responsibility will actually make him come a bit more of a outspoken player. There's been a couple of times this season where I've seen him actually say to the rest of the team, "Come on, like why aren't you pressing with me?" and that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And I haven't really seen that before. And I think that decision will make the fans happy as well. I think.
Mm. I agree with you on that. I think Bowen. I think people were a bit sceptical with Bowen because of the form, but I think this man being here for 7 years, he's committed his life to West Ham basically now, like his like career. I would give it to him. Um, Best moment this season for you, Brian?
Um, that's a hard one. There's a few things that spring to mind without really deep in it. I don't want to like take long, so I could take
Mm.
long to think about it. But um, the away win at Arsenal was good. Um, I actually liked the Brighton win as well. Um, and in Europe, who was it we played in the just before in last 16 when Mo got the goal?
Freiburg.
Freiburg. That game, I enjoyed that game and
Mm.
that moment. Yeah, when where Kudus scored that goal, I thought was because it made me jump out my seat that moment. So yeah, they're the ones that kind of, without thinking, there's probably loads more, but those spring to mind.
I've got to be honest. The Brighton game, I remember it. It was a lovely hot day,
Mm.
and I'll never forget. We were so outsiders to win that game, and we managed to like. We was 3-0 up, and obviously it was comfortable, and then obviously they scored. But the Arsenal game does spring to mind. It really does because no one expected West Ham to go there and win, and that was probably Moyes' best victory sort of defensive performance because it was just like they didn't do nothing. Arsenal, right? We could have won it 3-0 right, instead of
And you
2-0.
know,
Like,
you know what, James? Remember when we all saw the lineup, yeah, and we saw
yeah,
Mavropanos and O'Connor at centre backs. We all thought, oh my god,
yeah,
because I know why I did. I was thinking, nah, like that's you know what I mean. The third and fourth choice centre backs, and
yeah,
solid clean sheet.
yeah. I know it was that was a good victory. I must admit. There hasn't been many more. Obviously, the Spurs one at White Hart Lane would always sort of, even though we didn't play well that game, to
Yeah,
win
we were
there.
shocking first half,
Yeah,
shocking, terrible.
we was, but I'll always take. I don't care how we play as long as we beat them, especially on their own patch. But yeah, I'm going to say Brighton for me. I think Brighton was very good. Um, Worst moment for you this season, Brian?
Definitely Arsenal. Arsenal at home,
Yeah,
6-0. Um, I was there and it was terrible. I think when I remember that game, it was like you could see the players were just suffering. Like they were looking at
yeah,
each other, they were embarrassed, seeing the stadium, seeing the white seats and it, and people empty out quickly. Um, Even at the end, like doing the fan cams and stuff, none of us wanted to be there. And as soon as we started to pack up the cameras and stuff, you then get all the Arsenal media lot coming around and Joe Bayo from Five came and was like, "Oh, you packing up already, lads? Where are you going?"
yeah.
So you get all that banter and stuff. So it was a horrible, 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 horrible day.
Uh, I agree. The Arsenal one did cut deep, but we had a lot of injuries there. I think the Fulham one does me more than anything because we just fell apart, completely
Mm,
fell apart, and the Crystal Palace one,
yeah,
like recently, like I didn't like that performance at all. It was like people, all the lads have been out on the piss the night before, like, and they just didn't know how to play football. And it was like you just chucked all these lads on the pitch and said have a kick about in South London. Um, the Chelsea one, obviously they're rivals. A lot of people are Chelsea fans, and that one sort of stung a bit. Um, and yeah, I think Aston Villa away also. I think that don't really get a lot of mention, but we got obliterated up there and all. And I know they're a good side, but we just didn't do nothing with any notes. There's been times this year where we've put in performances, and even so much as the Newcastle game away, like being
that
in control and
that
then
one hurt.
losing it. Yeah,
Yeah, that one hurt. The Newcastle one hurt because being 3-1 up with what 15 minutes to go or
yeah,
whatever away from home and then to lose it in the fashion that we lost it, that one really hurt. The Villa ones, it's funny because there's certain ones that we had, like the Villa and the Palace one,
mm,
you could say at the times that they gave us a hiding, they were on the come up. So
yeah,
it's like, you know, their wheels are in motion, Villa, and same with Palace. Like they've gone on to then continue that run after them giving us a hiding and they've given everyone else a hiding, which didn't make it feel as bad. But you're right. I mean, like you said at the beginning, James, the fact that we lost those games and other games in the fashion that we did when we're conceding like more than 5 goals, 4 or 5 goals, you know what I mean, 7 times this season. It's just crazy. It's
yeah.
crazy. And
It is.
for,
It
yeah,
is really
it
like
is, isn't it?
when you think about it, like, and I know what you're saying. You are right, like, and a lot of people have been right on this. I'll give them their like applaudits. That some of them have said, you know what, it's overshadowing what West Ham actually are. Like, because there's been games this season, Brian, where I've looked at it. I remember the Burnley away game, right? That
Mm,
one, I never forget where I was. It was 25th of November. I watched the game because I'd just been out to, I think it was a Christmas market or something. Like Christmas market just started, right?
yeah,
Up in Suffolk where my missus lives. And I come back, I watched the game, and I nearly smashed up the iPad because it was just that bad. And then we end up winning the game 2-1. Divine scores, like
yeah,
in the end, to sort of get the victory. But there's been a lot of games this year where we've sort of, yeah, we've got away with it. Like it's always sort of papering over the cracks each time. Obviously, there's been a few games this year that we've been done, i.e., like by VAR decisions and Sheffield United away, Burnley at home. Them two games, that's just 4 points there that we should
yeah.
have had. Really, do you know what I'm saying? But I understand what you're saying. Final question in regards to this sort of segment:
Mhm.
how will you remember David Moyes, Brian?
Um, I will. I've said it before. I will actually be very grateful um, for the things that he's brought to the club. And the first thing is he brought was stability when he came at a bad time. So he saved us from relegation twice. And I think with that second spell particularly, I think what he got us doing, he got the team sort of working a little bit more harder. You know,
Yeah,
the running stats increased a little bit. There was a bit more cohesion. I'd be grateful for the lockdown season, which I think was his best period. Um, and there was just a couple of master strokes. The counter attack style that we played during that season was perfect. Always having that spare man over Lingard, box to box. Like it was just everything about that season. Um, was perfect. The European nights, the experiences, being that unknown entity, and the
yeah,
fact that 3 years in a row, quarterfinals, a couple of semi-finals, and a final. I think that that couldn't be. It surprised everyone, and I think it's just because of our playing style suits
yeah,
European football better. So I'll be grateful for that because he's brought some of the best moments that you and I have experienced in our life. Do you know what I mean? So I'll definitely be grateful and thankful for those moments. And equally, I'll be frustrated for a lot of stuff that he didn't do. Do you know what I mean? But I think at the end of the day, the accolades of some of those achievements will always outweigh the things that he didn't do. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
In my opinion. So yeah, I will be grateful, but at the same time, I'm super glad that there's been a change. I
yeah.
couldn't, I couldn't have gone on with David Moyes, not at all. Like,
Mhm.
and I actually feel we've spoken before about the atmosphere at LS, and I feel there is a percentage of there's so many factors why it is what it is, but I actually feel because of the style of play, it massively contributes to the atmosphere there. Because if you go back to the games where we were thriving, if you look at the European nights,
Mhm.
the semi-finals, and even against Leverkusen last month, like the atmosphere was unreal. It kind of rivaled like the last game at Upton Park against United. It was that kind of level. And it just goes to show that when the team are playing in a certain way, the fans are going to be right behind it. So the fact that it has been the style it has, I think it has impacted the overall mood because everyone's thinking, this is just dry.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, mate. For me, it's been the best moments that I've seen as a West Ham fan. Like to witness Prague and witness how much of a fan base we actually have. Like people who go over there didn't even have a ticket. Some of the boys on his channel was there. Some of them was in the ground when it happened. And then to come back 24 hours later and you got like a quarter of a million people on the streets of East London coming out from
Mm,
Stratford to East Ham, all over the place, coming and watching the parade and everything. It was special, special. And the thing is, I get why people wanted Moyes out. I can understand that to a point, but my attitude is you can't knock what the geezer's done. Like he's done well enough for us. Do you know what I mean? Because before him, we would have dreamed to be in any cup final. Do you know what I mean? Even if it was a charity shield, we would have loved it as fans. But Prague will never be matched. Some of the European adventures, like some of the lads that I speak to, Leon away, Seville home, them two are special games. Obviously, the Frankfurt home and away was painful, but it is what it is. You have to go through the hard times to appreciate the best moment, and Prague was the best moment for West Ham. Obviously, now Lopetegui, it comes into a side where he's got to rebuild it. But if he can sort of match or do better what Moyes has done, then we're going to be all right as a fan base. Do you know what I'm saying? And one thing I am pleased about, Brian, and I'm going to say it, is that I'm pleased that it's over now. The Moyes thing is officially over, and people can sort of put their Moyes out stuff away. Even though I see it in the chat there, that someone saying Moyes out. They can stick that to one side now. And after Manchester City, he is no more. Do you know what I'm saying? It was the final game, and that's it. And the fan base can just get back together and get back to sort of being normal instead of just wanting to have a row with everyone every 5 seconds. So, you know, I'm always going to sort of appreciate what he's done, even though it's been hard. listen, we've had many years as West Ham fans of it being hard, but I'll accept that while winning that trophy. So yeah, Brian, Mental Health Awareness Week. Obviously, I was speaking to you off air about it. It's a big topic of conversation. Like me and you were discussing that sort of video from the Wolves and Norwich. Obviously, what would be the best way of people to deal with that sort of situation?
You know, with Mental Health Awareness Week, you know, not everyone's sort of like familiar with stuff like that. But with the work I do in terms of my normal job, which, you know, I run a charity and we support children and young people to improve their mental health. So it's very much on my radar generally. And I think, you know, the week allows everyone to basically focus on, if you've got something going on personally, it's about having the opportunity to basically get support, share whatever difficulties you're going through, which is not easy for everyone. But sometimes when you have weeks like Mental Health Awareness Weeks, there's so much stuff and information that is out in circulation, whether that be in social media or TV, etc., that all it takes is kind of like taking the effort to kind of look at one of those things and maybe taking that step to just kind of get some, you know, get some help and advice and stuff. But it's not easy because, you know, poor mental health, because mental health is mental health, so it's distinguishing it, right? So when things are not good, it's poor mental health, and when you're good, you've got good mental health. So poor mental health, we all have it, we all get it at some point in our life, and it's about how the skills of how to overcome it. So how do we build our level of resilience to then overcome tough times, you know, so our bounce back ability is better. But it impacts everyone differently, and there's different forms of it, right? So it could be grief, you know, someone could suffer some form of bereavement, could be some people, you know, adults could be down to using, you know, their addiction. There's
Addiction.
lots of things that can get you in a spiral. And I think the first step is always about talking to someone, and being open and honest as possible. And sometimes people feel comfortable when it's actually a stranger, someone outside of their circle. They feel they can talk, be a bit more open.
I agree with that. Yeah.
You know, but that's always the first step, you know, is trying to get out of your own head and talk to someone. Because a step is around owning, some people call it like owning your own thoughts and actions. Yeah. So when you know you're down and you feel down and out, sometimes when you're able to be in a position, which is not easy, but you're able to be in a position to be like, well, I don't like feeling like this and I want to do something about it, it can then sometimes lead to that person taking a step forward in how to change their circumstances.
I agree with you 100% there. I agree. You got to talk. You got to open up. You got to express yourself, and you got to have no fear of like being judged. Yeah, and what you've just said there about talking to a stranger. Sometimes strangers are the best people to talk to because they won't judge you. They don't know you. They don't know where you live. They don't know nothing. And listen, I've been there, and reason why I'm sort of speaking about it because obviously me and Brian spoke about it off air. There was two videos that's happened over the last sort of 4 or 5 months. Obviously, the Wolves one really touches my soul. Every time I see that video of that young man with that sign in his hand and people just coming up to him, and how one sign can make people just speak is like crazy to a point, but it's crazy in a very, very good way. And obviously, the Norwich video. Anyone remembers the Norwich video of the two gentlemen watching the football match? Everyone's looking at the individual thinking that he's not right, but in fact, it's the other man who's the one who does take his own life. And like recently, I've done a video on Saturday night. I heard something like about 4 or 5 days ago about a young girl who sadly took her life at 35 years old. And it sort of struck me in the heart and soul. Really, you shouldn't be even considering that. Do you know what I mean? And we've all been there. Like I'm going to be straight. I've been there in dark times where I've been nearly at the edge of the cliff, but I've been managed to be pulled back just before I've gone over the cliff. If that makes sense. So, listen, speak out, speak up, and have no fear. Do you know what I'm saying? Because everyone's got a life to live. That's one thing I will say. Everyone has got a life to live, and listen, I'm going to shout out one man. I can't believe I'm going to shout him out, but I am going to shout him out. I know me and him do clash quite a lot, but I'm going to shout out Nick from Claret and Booze, because I see something that he done the other day with all the people out there, and fair play to him. It takes a lot to get individuals on, speaking out, speaking up. And listen, me and Nick don't see eye to eye on West Ham, but as a human, I can respect him for what he's doing on that regard. Yeah. Also, shout out to the people that are not just suffering with mental health, but the people who are involved with someone who is suffering with mental health, because that's where I do come into the equation on that. Like, I don't suffer with mental health, but a family member of mine does, and that it can also be a hard thing to sort of suffer. Do you know what I mean? When you are seeing your father or family member in a situation where you're trying to help them and they don't understand it, and they think they're all right, but they're not all right, that can be demoralizing and crippling to a point. And that is also, people don't really get a lot of mention on that regard. So yeah, listen, that's all I'm going to say on that in regards to me. Anything else, Brian, you want to add before we wrap this up, mate?
Yeah, no, with that last one, definitely, because I've been there too. You know, I've had, family members that have been patients, and then, as a result, you're doing what you can do, and it becomes a situation where that can impact your own mental health as well. So you need to check in with people as well. Like I said before, you need a bit of respite in those situations, and it's about creating a support network. And yeah, credit what you said, about Nick. I saw that too. I think what he's doing over there is it's great. Anything like that, I'm always for, when you kind of have a network of people who can tap in with each other and stuff. And that's how it all starts. And this is really good.
I agree on that. Listen, people have got lives to live, and if you can help someone save someone's life before they get over that edge, then listen, I respect any man. I really would. Any man, woman, child, anyone who's sort of helping someone from the brink. Yeah, because that's what it's all about. Because in this day and age, in the 21st century, we shouldn't be sort of self-deleting, basically. Do you know what I mean? We should be looking at trying to live our life to the fullest and longest, and not looking to sort of check out before too long. So, so shout out to everyone out there who's doing all that good work in the community, in the mental health community. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on as always, mate. It's been a mad old season, not gonna lie. I'm gonna be glad when it's over. I'm not gonna lie on that either. Shout out your socials, Brian, where people can find you before we wrap this up, mate.
Yeah, just currently only on Instagram. You can find me on West Ham fan _Brian, and then just catch up with some bits on there. And next season, West Ham Fan TV. No worries at all, mate. No worries at all. That's been Brian. That's been me. Smash a like on this video. Subscribe to this channel. Also, I'll shout out everyone else. Right, come and subscribe here. Absolutely.
I'll be back during the week to talk about Manchester City. God, dear, that's gonna be fun. Party up in Manchester. I mean, will West Ham turn up and do some damage, or will West Ham just turn up and leave the goal open for them to score in? Who knows? But is what it is. Anyway, before I go, look after yourselves. Speak out. Speak freely, and don't sit in silence. Take care. Peace. Level up.